Kurt Knewitz, byswd.com.
byswd.com. What is that company?
We tell everybody we're the Zillow of the saltwater disposal industry. So we're
Okay.
the largest online marketplace connecting buyers and sellers of saltwater disposal wells.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that industry. It's a big industry. It's a growing industry. It seems to be one that doesn't get talked about very much. Talk to me a little bit about that industry. What's been going on over, say, the last decade?
Well, quite a lot has changed. 10 years ago, water wasn't such a hot topic. Now, thanks to, advances in drilling and completion technologies, water's a big deal. Companies are using, drilling 3-mile laterals, 2 to 3 mile laterals. The average completion is growing from, I think it was 300,000 barrels. Now it's up to 400,000 or 500,000 barrels per frac. There's a lot of completions that are, in excess of 1 million barrels per well. So there's a lot of wastewater that's being generated from completions and on the production side as well. These horizontals are producing a ton of water. So it's causing big problems. Now a lot of the saltwater disposal facilities are not just mom and pops. They're big private equity backed water midstream companies. They have facilities that can handle 100,000 plus barrels a day. So it is a very large industry, and it's continuing to grow.
Well, I'm looking at the recent Morgan Stanley report, 5,500 Permian wells to be drilled, 2.7 billion barrels, or 115 billion gallons to complete. I mean, we're talking about a lot of water that's going to be needed just in the Permian Basin alone. That doesn't include the Eagle Ford or, any of those other southern. I'm just, of course, in the state of Texas. I'm not including the Bakken or any of these other places. You mentioned wastewater. Do you deal with that at all, or do you just deal with the saltwater side? Just what exactly do you do specifically when it comes to the saltwater and wastewater? You mentioned off the air, kind of you're a broker. Do you put them together? But you're kind of in the thick of it.
Yeah, so really saltwater disposal wells are highly regulated facilities that are designed to receive and dispose of wastewater that is generated from drilling, completion, and production operations. So anytime you complete a well, you got to use water, and after the well is completed, that wastewater gets trucked or piped to nearby saltwater disposal wells. And then once an oil or a gas well is in production, when they produce oil and gas, they also produce water. Water is actually the largest byproduct generated from oil and gas operations. So, the Permian, as you mentioned, I've read various reports where people say that there's anywhere from 15 to 25 million barrels a day of wastewater that is generated from oil and gas wells. And it's projected to double over the next 5 years. And this is according to the Energy Information Administration. They say 41,000 new wells will be drilled by 2023 just in the Permian Basin alone. And that daily water production will be somewhere around 50 million barrels a day. That's pretty substantial. There's a big problem.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You're talking about some things that are some very big numbers here, and here you've got a company that kind of deals with some of those solutions. What do you? They're obviously bigger than what you guys can do. I see that, but what are some of the solutions to these problems with all this wastewater and salt water?
Treatment, recycling is something that's starting to kind of grow. I don't know the official numbers, but I hear that less than 10% of all the wastewater that's generated is actually treated for reuse. So as some of these technologies kind of begin to gain more momentum, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more and more of that. Operators are starting to get pretty wise, and they've realized that treating it can save money. They used to just treat it as a waste stream, but now water is truly a commodity. So instead of paying a trucking company to haul it off and dispose of it, they're keeping it on the lease and treating it through different types of solutions. Could be mechanical, could be chemical, and they're reusing it for subsequent completions. So I think really recycling and treatment's going to start to grow. So,
I'm looking at fracfocus.org, and they're looking at the frac job. The average frac job now consumes 13 million gallons, up 40% in 2 years, and it's only going to get more and more. And when I'm listening to you talk about this industry, this growing industry of really, when you look back at 5 years, I think they came out with a report that said the amount of water that was needed, at least I know in the Bakken, was double what they thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, what's going on here? I mean, this is quite an industry is really trying to figure out innovative ways to recycle and reuse water, because every time I turn around, it seems like they need just a little bit more water, and this is kind of unanticipated. You know what I mean? It's almost like in the way flaring is forcing natural gas innovation to happen, this demand for water is almost forcing saltwater innovation to happen. Are you following me on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you qualified to comment on that, or are you just are you just brokering people together?
I guess it just depends on who you ask. We've been in the industry since 2014. We used to own and operate saltwater disposal down in South Texas in the Eagleford, and a lot has changed since then. Operators are drilling longer laterals. They're using super pads or pad drilling, where multiple oil and gas wells are drilled and completed from a single surface location and then fracked consecutively. So you can go to Google Earth and zoom in anywhere in the Permian Basin, and you'll see giant water pits or ponds, many of which are 1 million barrels or larger. I mean, they're big enough to put a ski boat on. And these are all frack water source pits. So all these farmers and landowners used to irrigate their crops, but now they've realized we can make way more money selling our water to E&Ps than we can, producing alfalfa. And they're charging, 50 cents a barrel. Many of these landowners are selling 100,000 plus barrels a day. They're making more money than they ever dreamed. And E&Ps are using it, which still only accounts for about 1% of the total water usage, which is kind of shocking considering the total volume. I mean, we did a study on produced water in the Permian, and every day they generate enough wastewater to fill 3 3/4 Empire State Buildings. So think about that for a minute. That is a ton of wastewater. And if all we're doing is just sending it to a disposal well and pumping it down whole to be lost forever, that is a very valuable commodity.
I'll tell you, I could see where this is going to become from competitive to ultra competitive pretty fast.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean by that? To where it's going to go from, handshakes to, okay, now we're going to start shoving each other a little bit here, trying to squeeze dollars out of nickels. I mean, I saw it happen in the environmental cleanup. You know what I mean? Those guys who come in and do the environmental cleanup, they got special Superman products that'll, get rid of the oil and turn it into a rice dinner for you. Do you know what I'm talking about? That sort of thing. Well, it seems like the marketing got to that point where the competitiveness of that got to that point. And so I almost am wondering about that. If the water saltwater industry is going to get. I mean, the frac sand didn't really. They got really competitive, but they didn't get Hatfield and McCoy competitive like some of the others. Do you know what I'm talking about here? Because some of these inner sub oil and gas industries, they can get pretty competitive, and they can start finger pointing and start shouting at each other that they don't, snake oil and you're causing problems here and there, that sort of thing. Has it been pretty calm in your guys' industry?
No, there's
no,
not at all. There's a lot of environmental issues surrounding seismicity, and it's really localized. It started in Oklahoma, up in the Arbuckle, in northern Oklahoma, back in the Mississippi Lime play, where Sand Ridge and a couple other operators were producing so much water, they had to drill and complete one saltwater disposal well for every 5 oil and gas wells, and they were pumping so much water downhole that it started causing earthquakes. Well, the Oklahoma Corporation Commission stepped in and, capped everybody's injection limits back. I think throttled people back like 40 or 50% of their permitted capacity. And that curtailed most of the seismic events, but it didn't eliminate them entirely. So what we're seeing in Texas, especially around in Reeves County, like in the Pecos area, we've seen a lot of seismic events. So the Railroad Commission is really paying close attention to that area, and permits. I think there's over 200 permits for saltwater disposal wells that are currently under review in just Reeves County alone. And so with that backlog, there isn't enough available disposal capacity to support all of the existing producers and their continuous operations. So that's causing significant bottlenecks. All these big water midstream companies that have jumped onto the scene just in the last few years that have, $500 million in private equity behind them, they're now, they're racing to secure and control as much acreage as possible. So it's like the Wild West. I mean, you have companies that are trying to secure long-term agreements. They're trying to get acreage dedications and minimum volume commitments from oil and gas producers to handle all of their water. And they're putting in tons of infrastructure to support the current, state of the industry, as well as trying to build out the infrastructure to support all of the projected growth. And that's a huge challenge. And it's highly competitive. It's real interesting to see. You have big companies, buying big water midstream companies that are buying EMP's water assets and infrastructure, all of their produced water gathering systems, all their disposals. So the EMPs now are monetizing all of their water assets. And so, it used to just be a lease operating expense, but now it's truly it's a profit center, really.
Sure, it becomes a department of their company.
Yeah, there's huge water management teams and divisions inside these companies. That's all they do is focus on water. Sourcing, storage, transfer, disposal, treatment.
In the media, it's like when you buy an event planning business because, you've got the marketing and the distribution to go hand in hand with events, and the EMP's got a great system in place for these water, for the water department on their deal. It just, if it works good for the vertical integration, it works really well. Interesting about, you mentioned the saltwater infrastructure, and by the way, this is now it's Kurt Knewitz?
Knewitz. Very close.
Knewitz. Okay. By swd.com. You mentioned the saltwater infrastructure, and that's something that people probably don't talk about too often. We mentioned the natural gas infrastructure, we mentioned the crude oil infrastructure, but the saltwater infrastructure, whether it's the ponds or whether it's the trucks or the pipelines, talk to me a little bit about that. If do you know exactly kind of where the state of it is right now? Is it up to par? Do we need certain areas to be more, focused than other? Because it's an integral part of the business. You know that.
Yeah. Well, they're spending billions this year. I'm told that the projects that are currently in queue that are under development for water midstream are, what was the final number? I think there's over 1.2 billion in water infrastructure projects currently underway in the Permian Basin. Just pipelines.
That's salt water.
Yeah, to handle the produced water.
I tell you, it's something else. Every time you turn around, this oil and gas industry, it seems like it powers so many different industries. I mean, it's no wonder it's the only industry that's added jobs in the last 10 years. Isn't it? Did you know that, by the way? Out of all of this millennial talk and technology talk and all of these different industries that were going to save our economy, the only industry that added jobs as a net gain in the last 10 years is the oil and gas industry.
That doesn't surprise me.
No, it's not surprising, really, when you take a step back and you think, yeah, well, they're really the only ones that have been around, and everyone else has just kind of been a flash in the pan. And interesting. Hey, I was looking at your LinkedIn account here, and there's something you're promoting on here called SWD Invest. Are you affiliated with that?
Yes, we are.
Okay, well, talk to me about that. A little free plug.
So, we are. SWD is currently going through a major expansion. We are developing several new products this year that we're going to be rolling out. Our vision is to create a digital ecosystem, if you will, which kind of is geared towards all of the water industry participants, whether you're an owner, an operator, a buyer, a seller, an investor, a vendor, a service provider, anybody that works in the oil field water space. We want to create a platform to help you interact and transact in the most efficient manner possible. So we've been approached by investors for a couple of years now who might not have $5 million available to go buy an existing saltwater disposal well, nor do they have the operating experience necessary, but yet they still want to participate in the industry. So we've created a platform called swdinvest.com, which will enable accredited investors to buy fractional interest in profitable saltwater disposal wells. So how it works is SWD Invest is a subsidiary of SWD, and we have over 220 properties currently in inventory. So SWD Invest will cherry pick some of the best performing assets from the SWD inventory and then make them available for accredited investors to buy fractional interest in. And they receive, monthly income. Just instead of buying a rental house, for instance, you can invest directly into a saltwater disposal well.
Interesting.
And we're excited. We just announced our official launch. We're actually going to be in New York next Monday.
Oh, this is like kind of almost breaking news, huh?
Oh, it's brand new. Yeah, hot off the press.
Oh, look at that. Here I just, I looked up some information on LinkedIn on you, and I saw that you're getting a lot of kudos from people saying, "Hey, congrats, good job, SWD Invest." I thought, well, what the heck? I got we got the horse's mouth right here. I might as well ask him what's going on. So,
yeah, we're pretty excited about it. We have a lot of really strong assets in our inventory, and we're going to open it up and allow individuals to really capitalize on this growing industry. So we're pretty excited about it.
I've seen things like this in other industries. Real estate probably is the most popular one. It's a real estate investment trust REIT, they're pronounced.
REITs. Yep.
Yeah, REITs. And, is that kind of what this is? Something along those lines? Obviously, it's not the same by any means, but essentially that's kind of, you're grouping things together to give you the best payout.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very similar in concept.
Yeah.
Investors get to buy directly. They will own a piece of an existing profitable saltwater disposal well, and they'll receive income on a monthly or a quarterly basis based on their percentage of ownership. So if someone, just as an example, you can go buy a rent house for $98,000 and charge 1% a month, which is typical rental rates. But then you have to back out your operating costs, your maintenance, property taxes, any repairs, etc. So your returns, can vary. But with a saltwater disposal well, you put $98,000 into an existing profitable disposal facility, your returns are 20 to 30% annualized. So the return potential is significantly higher. Comes with a little bit of risk, but the rewards are far better than what you could get in traditional income producing properties within real estate sector. So
that's kind of rolling out this week. You said you're going to New York for this. It's not going to hit the stock exchange, is it?
No. We've been invited to present at the National Investment Banking Association conference on the 26th. So we're going to go up there and possibly look at creating some selling groups, maybe with some broker dealers or family offices, and
sure, rub some elbows.
If they're interested. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If they're interested in participating, or if they have clients that are interested in this type of investment, we're more than happy to chat with them. So
now you guys are out of Dallas, aren't you?
Yes.
And you still got to go to New York to hobnob with the money guys. There's not enough of those guys down in Dallas, huh?
Well, there's a lot in Dallas, but we have over about $100 million in inventory that we plan to acquire and operate, and so I think rubbing elbows with some of the New York boys might be able to help us. So
are you guys just strictly down in the Texas plays, southern plays, or do you find yourself in the Bakken, Niobrara, Alaska, maybe Marcellus? Are you guys all over, or do you isolate it in a certain area?
So BuySWD has inventory. We have 220, 230 properties across 10 states. So we have assets that are available for purchase in all the major unconventionals. I think we're in, obviously, Texas is the bulk of our inventory, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, North Dakota, Louisiana. We even had one in Kansas, Montana, Ohio. So we have helped people find and acquire assets in 10 different states at the moment.
Okay.
We're not in Canada yet, but we are going to be expanding into Canada in Q3.
Okay, sounds good. And just kind of an overview of the saltwater industry. You guys are looking at it obviously as not slowing down anytime soon. Not only increasing, but probably even could have a few new innovations and solutions to come in to even help the industry out a little bit, huh?
Yeah, the saltwater disposal industry is actually, last year, just in the Permian Basin, it was a $2.6 billion industry. By 2023, over the next 5 years, it'll almost double. It's projected to grow to $4.6 billion, just Permian saltwater disposal industry.
Jeez, that's crazy.
So almost 100% growth over the next 5 years. So pretty substantial.
Well, if somebody wants to get in touch with the Zillow of saltwater disposal, give us your contact information.
It's just Kurt, Kurt, at buyswd.com, or they can call me directly at 214-418-1177. Happy to help anybody out. If they're looking to buy or sell or want to invest, we're more than happy to try and help.